for example 2, on day 2 notes in Unit 5, it says using algebra to find angle and or length measures in isosceles triangles. So again, we have that isosceles triangle where the two sides, or the two legs, are congruent as well as the two base angles. So in A, we know that this is isosceles because it tells us that these angles are 44 degrees each. And that means that these two sides have to be congruent, our legs, so y is 7. And then we can add the 44 degrees together and subtract that from 180 to get our value of x. So if I subtract, we get 92 degrees. Okay, in part B, it says just to find x. So it looks like because these are congruent angles, or base angles, this and these are my congruent legs. So 2x plus 1 equals x plus 4. I subtract x to both sides, we get x. So you can put a 1 there if that helps you. Add our 1 to the other side, and we get 5. In letter C, very similar to letter B, we're given those two base angles, which means that these two legs are congruent. So to solve, we set each expression equal to each other. If I subtract 15 to both sides, I would get 8x. If I add 17 to both sides, I get 24. And if I divide both sides by 8, we get x is 3. And then in letter D, we know these are our base angles here because they are congruent, meaning these two legs are congruent. And again, it's very similar to C and B. We're setting these two expressions equal to each other. So subtract 3, we get 6x. We add 73, and we get 96. And then lastly, we divide by 6, and we get 16. Okay. Then at the very top of the last page there, third page of day 2 notes, we just need to fill in our definition for corollary. So a corollary is a theorem that can be proved easily using another theorem. Okay, for example 3, this part of the notes here is all about the equilateral triangle. And I wrote in here some big ideas. One, all angles are congruent, which means they all are 60 degrees, because 180 divided evenly 3 ways is 60 degrees. For number 2, all sides are congruent. If you know these two things about equilateral triangles, you should be able to solve any problem that you are given with equilateral triangles. So for example A, all I'm given is that all sides are congruent, and I got to find x for this angle here. Well, I just told you that all angles are congruent, which they are 60 degrees. You have to memorize that they are all 60 degrees. So I just set 4x minus 20 equal to 60 and solve. So if I add 20, we get 80. And if I divide by 4, that is 20. And since x here is part of the expression, we just put 20. It's not the whole angle, so I don't put a degrees there. Okay, for part B, same exact ideology. Here, all sides are congruent. Trying to figure out this angle, we just set this equal to 60. So subtract the 32 and divide by the 2, we get 14. Okay, letter C, we are told that two angles are 60 here, And so if this is 60 and this is 60, the other one has to be 60. So now we're looking at an equilateral triangle. And if we know that we have an equilateral triangle, all sides are the same, which this side is 7. So I'm just going to set the 2x minus 3 equal to 7 and solve. So I add 3, divide by 2, and we get x is 5. And then the angle V, we already discussed, was 60 because in an equilateral triangle, all angles are 60. Okay, and then lastly in angle D, it tells us if triangle PQR is an equilateral triangle, solve for x and solve for y. So I'm going to go for x first. It's probably the easiest one. So here I'm looking at an angle measurement. We know that each one of these angles is 60. So I'm just going to set that equal to 60. So if I add 3, we get 63. Divide by 7, we get 9 for x. Okay, and then secondly, we know all sides are congruent. Every one of these has y in our expressions. So we're just going to pick 2 and set them equal to each other and solve it. So I'm just going to pick these 2 here. I could pick these 2. I could pick these 2. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to pick these 2 here. So 14y minus 59 equals 11y minus 23. Okay, again, I'm setting them equal because all sides are equal in an equilateral triangle. So if I go ahead and start solving by subtracting 11, we get 3y. And if I add 59 to the negative 23, we get 36. Divide by 3, we get 12.